A Complete Unknown is the most confusing movie to be nominated for an Oscar. This movie was fine. I'm not a huge Bob Dylan guy, so I went in knowing that this movie was not made for me. With that said, there are two kinds of biopics. The paint by numbers, everyone said they couldn't do it, but by golly they did, and the ones that actually find the theme of a person's life or work and really explore that theme. This movie found an interesting conflict in Bob Dylan's life, the pressure he received for using electric instruments when the folk music industry wanted him to stay acoustic. However, that conflict is like the last 20 minutes of this movie, and then they throw up a title card that says, Bob Dylan then went on to record an electric album, and it was real good. This is like a 4, and yet the Academy seems to be throwing this into every category it possibly can. Like, you're gonna put this in adapted screenplay with Conclave and Nickel Boys? Costumes? They're just wearing normal clothes. Half the time, Timothée Chalamet won't put his goddamn shirt on. But the ultimate, is Timothée Chalamet for Best Actor? He makes one face in this movie. Especially in a lineup that's this stacked, Coleman Domingo gives a really nuanced performance in Sing Sing. Ralph Fiennes is like the conduit for Conclave's entire feeling of drama and momentum. Sebastian Stan gives a consistently evolving portrayal of Trump that goes beyond just a shitty SNL impression. Very understated. Super glad he got recognition for this. And then you have Adrian Brody, who gives this powerhouse performance in The Brutalist. This dude will win Best Actor, and he deserves it even in a lineup this good. The only person I would have loved to see get a nod here is Hugh Grant for Heretic. That was not going to happen because blockbuster horror doesn't really get Oscar nominations, but this dude kind of popped off. But of course they weren't going to nominate him for Heretic. They didn't even nominate him for The Performance of a Lifetime. All of these great performances from this year, and you're going to put Timothée Chalamet in here, and not even for Dune 2 where he was at least pretty good, and when you also didn't even nominate him for The Performance of a Lifetime? Let's talk about The Brutalist. They called it that because halfway through this movie the lights come up for intermission and you go, oh yeah, we have 2 more hours of movie left. This is kind of brutal. There are points of real beauty in this movie. The opening sequence, the shaky cam POV of these immigrants who have just escaped the concentration camps getting off the boat in America and crying and hugging each other, overwhelmed by their escape and their freedom. To make you feel something like this within 5 minutes of starting your movie, pretty sick. I think the movie's overall story about the illusory nature of the American dream is really thought-provoking, and like I said, it's completely carried by an absolute beast of a performance from Adrian Brody. It's so detailed. But I walked away from it kind of like, okay, that was good, except I said it while fully unconscious because it was 11:30 and I'd been in the movie theater since 3 p.m. the previous day. I don't have any issues with this movie. Like, I can't really point to anything concrete and say, that's why I don't think this deserves 10 Oscar nominations. There are moments that, again, hit really hard. It just felt like the kind of movie destined to be fawned over by film critics. People who love this movie talk about it as a monumental achievement of production and scope, meticulously crafted to evoke a certain feeling, which it absolutely is. They filmed this in less than a month on a $10 million budget. That it looks this fucking good is insane. I just think I tend to like movies that are more about exploring an idea, and 3.5 hours is too long for that. You have to meander pretty hard to stretch an idea that far. And the second half of this movie does feel pretty meandery. Guy Pearce is just yoinking this dude around back and forth for like 2 hours. And yeah, maybe that's the point, but the end result is that I thought this movie was just good. I will say though, Oscar darlings are not always this cohesive. Sometimes the Academy decides that its collective obsession is, say, a boring action musical with terrible dialogue and not a single good song. I legitimately have no idea how this movie was nominated for 13 awards. Literally every category it's in is just the biggest, Best adapted screenplay? Then how come you made Selena Gomez say this? And it's got a nomination for original score and 2 nominations for original song. The thing about that is, no. They went the Cats 2019 route where there are so many songs and none of them have a melody. So it's just 4-minute intervals of actors singing the worst dialogue you've ever heard.
Lady, you know I only fixed the body. Skin, bones.
This one, which will probably win, is almost atonal. If Emilia Pérez has to win, the least they could do is give it for Mi Camino, which at least sounds like music. If I had to pick off of this list, gotta give it to Elton John. I have a very clear rubric for determining whether or not a song is good. Did Elton John write it, and was it not on one of his first 10 albums? I think if I could pick any original song from any movie in 2024, probably gotta be Not My Fault from Mean Girls. Kinda slaps, but they were never gonna do that. There's been a little drama over Best Original Score because Dune 2 wasn't even nominated. Apparently the score is too derivative of the first movie. And then they said Wicked, based on an existing stage musical? Sure, why not? This is one of the ones that feels like you could justify any choice. I could see it going to Emilia Pérez because, it's a musical. I could see it going to Wicked because, it's a popular musical. I could can't see them giving it to The Brutalist because of how much the score adds to that movie's tone and atmosphere, and both Conclave and The Wild Robot had very good scores as well. But you know who's being completely slept on here? Challengers. Seriously, this score is incredible. It really makes you feel like a gay tennis player. Match Point from the Challenger soundtrack has the power to make any activity feel high stakes. With that said, I'll lock in my prediction for The Brutalist. Best Director. I think Brady Corbet is going to snag this one just because they're going to want to recognize him for making something so sweeping and cinematic, although apparently Sean Baker is kind of a favorite here. I think they're going to give it to Brady Corbet though, which means Coralie Farjat is about to get absolutely slept on. The Substance is the movie that should be winning Best Picture here, and making something so visually and tonally complete on your second feature should be worthy of recognition. If I had my way, Best Director would go to Coralie Farjat. Dev Patel for his incredible work on Monkey Man. Directorial debut this good, so mythological with such badass fight scenes, Dev Patel really wasn't monkeying around on this one, let me tell ya. Speaking of which, I guess the Academy really liked monkey graphics because they nominated both of 2024's monkey movies for Best Visual Effects. Alien Romulus did look very good, but not like groundbreakingly so. Out of this list, it should be Dune 2. Getting the textures of the energy shields and the ships and the explosions just so spot on was such a huge part of making this world feel so alive. But you know what's being slept on here? The Substance. Again, not even nominated. I straight up had to check the rules to make sure this category wasn't just for digital VFX, because the practical effects work in this movie was fucking revolting. It was the linchpin of the entire movie. I did not want to see some of this shit. They go way too far every time, and that's like the whole point. I think The Substance is pretty much a lock for best makeup and hairstyling, which I guess is the category they're putting these practical effects in, but honestly, I almost feel like the extent to which they went all out on these prosthetics deserves the VFX award too. But yeah, it's most likely going to Dune 2. The thing about predicting something like the Oscars is that it really isn't about what movie is the best, it's about where these awards fit into the narrative the Academy wants to spin around the movie. They nodded at Dune 2 for Best Picture like, wow, good job, and then slept on it for director, score, and adapted screenplay. So I feel like the technical categories are the ones that they're going to use to make up for the other snubs. I'm going to tentatively guess that they'll throw at cinematography, although I think it's really close between Dune 2 and The Brutalist, and it'll probably scoop up best sound as well, although I think, again, we're kind of sleeping on the Substance here. The sound of Dennis Quaid eating shrimp was enough for this woman to turn herself into Smeagol. Let's do the obvious ones. Supporting actor, Kieran Culkin. No one else is even close. Definitely not Edward Norton. Jeremy Strong was good, Guy Pearce was good, but Karen absolutely tore this movie up. Supporting actress, Zoe Saldana. Not because her performance was incredible, but because that's where the Academy is putting the win for Emilia Pérez. In all honesty, Ariana Grande should win this award. You can tell that she wanted to play this role her whole life, and she nailed it. Wicked is nominated in a bunch of categories, but with every single one, it's either there's absolutely no way, or yeah, that's pretty much a lock. Production design, obviously. Costumes, yeah, who else? Visual effects? Editing? Why? Animated feature is almost certainly going to The Wild Robot, although even though I haven't seen it, I bet the Wallace and Gromit is better. The Wild Robot was pretty, and it was a good movie, but the concept here could have been something insane if they were willing to go early 2000s Pixar emotional on it. They should have gone full WALL-E and had like no dialogue. All I gotta say is Piece by Piece is kind of getting slept on here. Such a fun art style with a great soundtrack, come on. Best Picture is either going to The Brutalist or Anora, probably Anora, although after that out of nowhere win at the SAG Awards, Conclave is now kind of squeezing into the front as well, but there's no way they give it to Conclave. The closest race of this entire thing is Best Actress, which is a toss-up between Mikey Madison and Demi Moore. The thing about this is I kind of see both of the narratives here. The Substance getting slept on for everything else might make them want to recognize Demi Moore for such a bold and transformative performance, but I think Anora is going to be the big winner of the evening, and the entire thing is centered on Mikey Madison's performance. If I had to choose the better performance, I'd say probably Mikey Madison, even though I think Demi Moore is great in The Substance, and The Substance to me is very clearly the better movie. I'm gonna very hesitantly guess Mikey Madison for Best Actress. And then you have the random wins just kind of sprinkled in. Adapted screenplay, they're gonna want to give Conclave something, and honestly, off of this list, I think that's correct. It's just crazy that Dune 2 isn't in here. Editing, frankly, this should probably go to Conclave since the editing in that movie plays a big part in the feeling of momentum that it has, but they're gonna give it to Anora just because they like that movie. Anora is also gonna win original screenplay, although off of this list, The Substance, come on. This movie is getting slept on so hard. If I had seen this in 2024, this absolutely would have been on my favorites list. It's so gross, but in a really detailed, interesting way. But this category is the biggest snub of all because how are you not gonna put challengers in here? That movie was crazy. I've never seen a movie so non-linear, so stacked with dramatic reveals, and most importantly of all, so horny about tennis. Does that mean nothing to you? If you're not gonna award the gay tennis movie anything, then what's even the point of making movies anymore?